السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to Islam step by step, and with the sixth pillar of Al-Iman, the belief in the Qadr, the belief in the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Four pillars in believing in the Qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have to establish them, to establish that belief in our hearts, for us to believe in the Qadr, the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Qadr, is the least pillar of Al-Iman that has evidences in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's meant to be this way because it's the secret of Allah, and as mentioned before, we believe in it by necessity because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. So four pillars in the belief of the Qadr, the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first one, the knowledge. The knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything. When we say everything, that means the past, the present, the future, the things that would never ever happen. If it would ever happen, how it would happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran about the disbelievers in the hellfire, when they're presented to the hellfire, and they would say that they wish that they can go back to this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَوْ رُدُّوا لَعَادُوا لِمَا نُهُوا عَنْهُ وَإِنَّهُمْ لَكَاذِبُونَ, which means if they would have ever returned back to this world again, which would never happen, this is impossible to happen, they would return back to the same actions and the same disbelief, and they are liars. So this is the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, encompasses everything. So our actions, the things that happens to us, the things that we see around us, everything happens by the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the pillar of Al-Ilm. The second pillar is Al-Kitaba. Everything is written. Everything is recorded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the pen to write everything that is going to happen till the Day of Judgment. And this has more than one type of recording, whether it's in the womb of the mother, whether it's before even the creation of the human beings, whether it's in the Laylatul Qadr every year, where what's in the Lawh al-Mahfuz, what's in the sacred tablets comes down for the angels to see what's going to happen in that particular year, who's going to die and who's going to live, and so on. And every day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that decreed the matter of all of the human beings. So the writing, it's another pillar of the belief in the Qadr. The third pillar in the belief of the Qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Mashi'a, the will of Allah. That the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything. We have a will, and this is a reality. This is, if whoever denies that we have a will, he is ignorant, he is someone that is either stubborn or he is crazy, he lost his mind. So we have a will. But the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that in the Quran, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ, that you would never will anything except if the will of the Lord of the Alameen is established. That means it's really states that we have a will, but the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses everything. And the fourth pillar is Al-Khalq, is the creation. That everything is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and also created what you do. Because the actions of the human beings are creation of Allah, because we are creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it's other than Allah and His attributes, then it's the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to believe in this. So these are the four pillars of Al-Qadr that the ulama mentioned based on looking at the ayat of the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The ilm, the knowledge, Al-Kitaba, writing, Al-Mashi'a, the will, and Al-Khalq is the creation. So memorize these four pillars and always have them established in your heart, and you would see the fruits of it and the benefits of it, of being content, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Most High. The seed of all evil in this life is the arrogance of the human being when they think that they need to know everything. It's a good thing to have the zeal to know, yes, but we only know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted for us to know. Anything beyond what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted for us to know in this life, there's no way for anyone to get to know it till in the Day of Judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reveal things to the people. So to believe in the unseen, that means we need to believe in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the pillars of the belief in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is essential, because this is one of the pillars of Al-Iman that a split happened to some of the factions of this ummah because of the belief in the qadr. Because they tried to use their intellect when there was text and revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because again, as we heard before, that our reason and intellect cannot really comprehend and understand the essence of the qadr, but we need to believe, and it's by necessity perfect sense whatsoever when it comes to the belief in the qadr. So the two extremes, those who denied the qadr whatsoever, and that's basically a matter of disbelief, and those who would have the other extreme where they believe that everything is by the decree of Allah, in a sense that everybody is forced to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed, denying the will of the human beings, and therefore this is also a false belief, this is deviation. And the proper belief in the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we mentioned, to believe in these four pillars, and to believe that everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are held accountable for our own actions. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.